My husband was taken hostage, and the enemy demanded 3 cities. I hesitated. Should I buy a pine coffin or a willow one? Princess Huayu, who willingly became a concubine, threatened me with our child, saying she'd die with him, buried alive to accompany her husband. I clung to the military strategist. Good heavens! 3 coffins? How much silver would that squander? When I drank the ceremonial wine with Du Huayan, my heart pounded. The man before me was fair and upright. Were it not for his crimson robes, he'd look ready to march to his death. After a tense standoff, I tentatively asked, "You didn't poison it, did you?" His already furrowed brows knitted tighter. "Lu Honluo, you're alone, but I have parents and clan to consider. Poisoning me would mean his entire family would be executed. So he wouldn't do it." I cleared my throat. His Majesty has bestowed upon me the imperial surname. Second young Master Du must now address me as Chi Honluo. The gentlemanly figure gritted his teeth. Does that really matter? I nodded obediently, drinking the ceremonial cup of wine without waiting for him. Disobeying an imperial command would also lead to your entire family being executed. His hand clamped down on my wrist. His towering figure loomed over me, casting me into shadow. Imperial command? General Qi used the Emperor's authority to force me to marry you. Are you satisfied now? Satisfied? How could I not be? My marriage to Du Huaiqian drew envy from the capital's noble ladies. Young General Qi, a model for us all. A melon forced open won't taste sweet. Will it? On my wedding day, my bridal veil was lifted by my closest confidants. Let us see. Qi Hongluo, is your smile stretched all the way to the heavens? 3 years ago, when I first arrived in the capital, would I have dared to force myself upon the second son of the esteemed Du family of Jiangdong? Outside the window, autumn rain fell in a steady drizzle. Leaning against the window, Du Huaiqian downed cup after cup of bitter wine. Seated beside the couch, I took pleasure in watching him lose his composure. Second young Master Du never touched a drop before. Now he drinks like a fish. He refused to spare me a glance. Yet beneath his lashes, crimson had already spread across his cheeks. How strikingly handsome. Only when he was too drunk to stand did he come to me. We sat side by side, listening to the night rain beating down on the paulownia leaves. In the end, he never touched me. He simply fell asleep, leaving behind a phrase cold as ice. Even drunk, I cannot mistake you for her. So he'd hoped to mistake me for his beloved in his intoxication, to muddle through the rites of Zhou Gong. The most agonizing people in this world are those like him. They strive to consider everything, yet their strength falls short, leaving them to focus on only one end. I sighed inwardly, hoisted him up, and tossed him into the study. Leaning over, I saw his deeply furrowed brow and whispered in his ear, "No need to struggle. I have another companion for the night." In the study, I wrote a note and sent a carrier pigeon toward the southwest military camp. Come play chess immediately. 1 spot open. Meet at the silver gold courtyard. Princess Huayu arrived sooner than I'd anticipated. Had I not intervened, she would now be Du Huaiqian's lawful wife. They grew up together in the same county. Childhood sweethearts. She painted, he inscribed verses. Their families were well matched. But more precious was their profound mutual understanding. My situation was different. When I first met Du Huaiqian, he was a noble scion, I was a lowly foot soldier. He came to the camp to visit his cousin and, while waiting, helped several soldiers write letters home. I admired his beautiful handwriting and stood behind him, watching for quite some time. When the crowd dispersed, he turned and our eyes met. His writing reflected his character. Yet he himself was even more captivating than his calligraphy. He asked softly, "Would you like me to write a letter for you too?" I snatched the brush from his hand and splashed ink to write my name. I study military strategy. so I naturally know how to write. But my parents passed away early, so I have no need for letters home. Pointing to my name, I smiled and asked him, "My name is Lu Hongluo. What's yours?" Perhaps he'd never met a girl as rough and tumble as me. He paused slightly, then asked for the brush back. Beside my name, he wrote his, Du Huiqian. I held the paper up, reading it aloud several times with great delight, until the military strategist Rong Xiao appeared silently before the tent. "Huiqian, come here." My scalp instantly prickled, so the cousin Du Huiqian had come to visit was our military strategist, a man as fearsome as the king of hell. I've never feared anyone since childhood. Villagers said I had bad luck, that I'd bring misfortune to my parents. Yet I'd pick up a stool and beat up Big Nyo, who was twice my size. When he slapped my lips bloody, I didn't care. If the stool broke, I'd bite him. The blood on my body had to include his share. After my grandparents passed, I hung around with the town blacksmith. Today I'd make him a pancake. Tomorrow a steamed bun. Over time, he began teaching me the forge. Those years crafting blades were when my body bore the most scars. But my relentless dedication made my weapons renowned far and wide, drawing Rong Zhao's attention. When he arrived, he wore a feather fan and jade crown. His gaze distant. A dark red scar wound from his right ear to his collarbone. I never knew where that scar truly ended. He took a liking to a blade I'd forged. Without a word, he drew it across his own arm. Blood beating like a fountain. "Ling Jing tempered," he remarked, lifting his gaze to meet mine. His eyes were like a hawk's. "A fine blade." I brought over a piece of iron and gestured for him to test it. A good blade cuts through iron without a sound. "Don't test it on yourself, old soldier." He flashed a chilling smile, resting the long blade on my shoulder. To test a blade, one must use a head. Before I could react, he seized my hand. His icy fingertips traced the thick calluses on my palm. "Dare you kill?" he asked. His interest piqued. I studied him from head to toe. "Will you pay?" His enthusiasm grew. "The more you kill, the more you earn." It was an autumn rain night, much like the one on my wedding day. I followed him into the Northern Frontier Prince's army. Only later did I learn that the Northern Frontier Prince's army was renowned throughout the land, and he was one of its 4 great military strategists, Rong Xiao. 2 years ago, on the battlefield, while covering his commander's retreat, he was captured by the enemy. Everyone declared him doomed. Yet 7 months later, he returned bearing the severed head of an enemy general. The scar on his neck gave rise to mythical tales. Rong Xiao was the incarnation of Neza, the demon-subduing celestial deity, possessing 3 heads and 6 arms. Deep within enemy territory, 1 head was severed. Now possessing 2 heads, he vowed to protect the royal army and reclaim the lost lands. It was this 2-headed, 6-armed demon king who taught me the art of killing with a blade. When I first went to battle to sever enemy heads, he forbade me from weeping or even furrowing my brow. "If you regretted this, you'd have stayed in the village, married, and had children." He hoisted me onto his horse, clutching me tightly to his chest, ignoring my trembling body. "But you refused to accept your fate. For the sake of one last breath, you faced thugs who could have killed you. Alone and destitute, you still sought out a blacksmith to learn his craft. Sandstorms blinded my eyes, but Rong Zhao's rough voice stirred a tempest within me. You don't just want to live, you want to live with dignity. You want those who looked down on you to fear you." I fought back tears then, clinging to him and asking, "Strategist, what should I do?" He cracked his whip, urging his horse toward a battlefield even more brutal. "Grip your blade tight. If I fall in battle, step over my corpse and push forward." That's why I never feared scum like big ox. They're all bark and no bite, with bones so soft they shatter at the slightest touch. But deep down, I feared Rong Xiao. His face was cold. His heart colder still. Every bone in his body was harder than cold iron. So when I first met Du Huaiqian, Rong Zhao's icy command, Huaiqian, come here. You. Get out, sent me fleeing instantly. He only folded the paper bearing my name and Du Huaiqian's, tucking it into the pouch I wore close to my skin. This pouch was later discovered by my friend Gao Liangzhu. Within days, the entire imperial capital buzzed with the news. Oh. Hongluo. Hongluo. That paper's already yellowed, must have been pining for second young Master Du for years. After that, I recaptured the 5 southwestern cities, achieving fame in a single battle. His Majesty bestowed upon me the imperial surname, and the head of the Jiangdong Du clan rode at full gallop to the capital, to petition for an imperial decree, arranging a marriage between me and Du Huaiqian. I told Princess Huiyu truthfully, I was young and impulsive, caught by beauty, and loved briefly. Besides, this imperial decree was sought by Du Huaiqian's own father. You came to me, but I had no choice. To my surprise, the precious princess gritted her teeth, knelt tearfully before me, and pleaded, I willingly become a concubine. Please, sister, take me in. I hurriedly helped her up, pulled her to sit beside me, and asked warmly, Sister, as royalty, your dowry must be quite substantial. I imagine? Who dares make Huiyu a concubine? Du Huaiqian strode over, his crimson official robes still unstripped, rushing to defend his sister, seated in the honored position. I sipped my tea with casual nonchalance. Second young master. You missed it earlier. She herself said she willingly offers to be a concubine, begging me to take her in. Huiyu stood up, hiding behind Du Huaiqian, merely twisting her handkerchief, looking utterly helpless. Du Huaiqian frowned coldly, his voice firm and decisive, You may wrong me, but you shall never wrong her again. I raised an eyebrow slightly, turning to look at Huiyu and asked with a smile. So, second young master Du refuses to take his beloved as a concubine? Seeing Du Huaiqian nod firmly, Huiyu grew flustered. After all, she had come precisely to be his concubine. She hadn't anticipated my sharp tongue daring to speak so plainly. She took 2 steps forward, about to protest. But I cut her off, indeed. As a county princess and imperial kin, Huiyu deserves a far more suitable match. I studied Du Huaiqian with keen interest. Would she truly stoop to being the subordinate wife of a son-in-law? I turned back to the stunned Huiyu, my smile growing brighter. A county princess born into the Prince of Qi's household, even if you were willing to be a concubine. Would the prince and princess ever consent? Huiyu looked at Du Huaiqian with hurt eyes. True to my provocation, Du Huaiqian swept his sleeve and prepared to escort Huiyu away. Qi Hongluo had one point right. Before leaving, Du Huaiqian shot me a vicious glare over his shoulder. If I let you make me a son-in-law's concubine, I'd have lived in vain. He escorted his beloved away. Whatever they said in that farewell, within 2 months, news of Princess Huiyu's marriage spread. When the servant arrived bearing the invitation, Du Huaiqian was writing in his study. I was supervising work in the back courtyard, building a martial arts garden with an adjoining pavilion for lodging. Since Princess Huiyu's departure, Du Huaiqian and I hadn't exchanged a single word. Today, however, I found myself clashing with him again over matters concerning his beloved. Holding the invitation, I tossed it from the study window onto his desk. It's a powerful nobleman under her father's patronage. Marrying him should grant her a lifetime of comfort. The dry early winter brought heavy clouds. Yet the snow lingered. Du Huaiqian's hand holding the brush paused for a long moment. That invitation seemed scalding to the touch. He glanced at it once, then lowered his eyes to write again, avoiding contact with it. I could only patiently add, if you don't wish to attend the banquet. I'll find an excuse to decline. Watching the one you love marry another is rather painful. My last words ignited Du Huaqian. He slammed down his brush and strode to the window. Though I'd been taller and sturdier than most women since childhood, Du Huaqian still towered half a head above me. Separated by the window frame, I lifted my gaze slightly. His eyes still held an unyielding hatred. Qi Hongluo, you've grown accustomed to solitude over the years, hardening your heart like stone. Is that why you care not a whit for others' lives? I stood in the biting north wind, frozen for a moment. I met those eyes, now blazing with fury. When we first met, they had been filled with the gentle warmth of spring breezes. How had we, without warning, reached this point of utter incompatibility? Resting my hand on the window frame, I offered a self-deprecating smile. Du air. I don't like being alone either. I don't like having a heart of stone either. At my words, Du Huaqian visibly startled. Have you ever had stomach trouble? I found myself unusually calm, speaking to him with rare composure. When I was 5, my parents ate a few meals of leftovers and suffered stomach ailments for days. With farm work overwhelming them and no money for medicine, they passed away. My gaze drifted, as if I could see that winter snowfall again. The first snow of early winter blanketed everything white beyond the window. The whiter the surroundings, the more the straw mats covering my parents' bodies seemed ashen. Snowflakes like cotton drifted silently down. A chill brushed my cheek, and I pulled my gaze away. After all, it was your father who went to request the imperial decree for our arranged marriage, not me. I released the window frame and stepped back. We were both forced into this. Why torment each other further? Du Huayan visibly softened, his eyes regaining the gentle warmth from when we first met. He murmured softly, "How were you forced into this? Rumors have long circulated in the capital about you. You and me." Sigh. I retrieved the old pouch and handed it over, along with the paper slip bearing both our names. If blame must be placed, blame my tactless confidant. Who could have guessed her playful teasing about me would become common knowledge? Du Huaqian opened the pouch, drew out the note, and stared blankly at the words written there. He probably couldn't recall that back then. I was still Lu Hongluo, just another nameless soldier among the hundreds of thousands in the royal army. I smiled. I too had someone I loved. But we were torn apart by that same imperial decree. So you really needn't hate me so much. Hearing this, Du Huayan slammed his hand against the window frame, sending dust and snow flurries swirling. His eyes widened in shock. You have another beloved? I shrugged, unwilling to elaborate, and gestured toward Princess Huayu's invitation. By the calendar, her wedding day falls when I'm deployed with the army. Go if you wish, or stay if you'd rather. No one dares come to the general's residence to take you. With that, I stepped out into the snow and left. That stunned gaze followed me for a long time. Even after I turned the corner of the corridor, Du Huayan remained standing at the window, utterly motionless. I understood his bewilderment. A promising match torn apart, he dared not blame his father, yet needed an outlet for his frustration. So he made me, the heartless one, his target. But deep down, he knew the truth. The real culprits were his own Du clan, desperate to curry favor with the powerful. When I first admired him, he had no military achievements, no imperial surname. Rumors swirled. Everyone treated me as a laughingstock. He dismissed me, and the Du family wouldn't even glance my way. Even his own sister, when we dined together, advised me, my brother is a scholar. He detests those who wield swords and spears. Red brocade deliberately spread such rumors. But it won't earn you his respect. I weakly protested. I didn't spread those rumors. I never insisted on marrying him. The only one who stood up for me then was Rong Xiao. He was heading to the barracks, claiming he was merely passing through, and insisted on taking me away without further discussion. Having trained in martial arts for years, he towered over me by a full head, broad-shouldered and imposing even without anger. "This is no place for you. Stubborn." I shook off his hand, "Just because I come from a lowly background. A soldier who kills. You all look down on me. Is that it?" Rongxiao turned to see my reddened eyes and, unusually, softened his tone. "Hong Luo. I don't." He scanned the crowd, his disdainful gaze sweeping over the delicate faces until it settled on Du Huiqian's sister. The prim young lady shivered visibly. "Is this how the Du family teaches their cousins to look down on others?" The young lady, utterly humiliated, covered her face and wept as she left. Rongxiao deliberately descended 2 steps, then looked up at me. "I said this isn't a place you should be. Given your status, you shouldn't attend their banquet." He reached out his hand again. "You should be seated at the table with their fathers." No one else could ease the pain I'd endured like he did. That day, I took his hand and climbed into his carriage. Leaning against his shoulder, I smiled mischievously. "Military strategist. Your route to the barracks heads east from the south. Our flower viewing banquet is northwest, not exactly on your way." He sat as still as a meditating monk, eyes closed in deep contemplation. Speaking slowly, "Gao Liangzhu said you secretly admire my cousin. She set you up to attend this flower viewing banquet to meet her sister. I just wanted to see if you'd really do something so foolish." I didn't let go, leaning closer to his cheek. "Now that I have done it." "What then?" My breath brushed his ear, and a suspicious flush instantly spread to his eyes. Following the path of that scar, even his neck turned crimson. I grew ever more curious. Where exactly did that scar end? Out of fear, I had rarely dared to look directly at Rongxiao's face before. That day in the carriage, I studied him closely. Long brows, starry eyes, a face as cold and clear as ice in jade, a beauty that felt distant and unreachable. Hearing my rather irreverent words, Rongxiao finally opened his eyes. He didn't look at me. His gaze fixed on my hand resting on his shoulder. "You dare let love and affection hold you back when lost territories remain unconquered?" He flipped his wrist, pinning me down in the cramped carriage with a few swift moves. When he exerted force, his arm was thicker than my neck, easily encircling my waist. "Come question us about neglecting you when you've become a general." He squeezed so hard it hurt. It wasn't until I later fought tooth and nail to make a name for myself, earning my title before the throne. Rongxiao stood beneath the Vermilion Palace gates as winter snow fell, bringing up an old matter I'd long forgotten. "If you still wish to marry him, now that you hold real power, seeking merit and petitioning the emperor isn't out of the question." But by then, the sea had long turned to fields, and I finally saw clearly. I walked toward the man who'd shared life and death with me. I brushed the snow from his shoulders and smiled. "As your military strategist, shall I forge you a new blade?" I intended to engrave the words "red brocade, gift of affection" upon it. But no sooner had I carved my own name than the imperial decree granting our marriage arrived. Du Huiqian harbors resentment, but mine runs deeper than his. Unlike him, born with good fortune, who grew up asking only if he wanted something, never whether he could have it. His charmed life needed only one thing to be complete: marrying the woman he loved. Not so for me. My body is riddled with wounds, and I could die on the battlefield any day. All I can hope for is to share a grave with the one I love. Step by step, I finally reached a position where I could demand what I wanted. Yet, by just one step, I missed the one I longed for. On our wedding night, I invited Rongxiao to my private courtyard. We drank wine and played chess, listening to the autumn wind carry rain, knocking down paulownia leaves. I lost and refused to concede, overturning the chessboard and throwing a tantrum with a sob. "You've been so competitive your whole life. Military strategist. Couldn't you just let me win this once?" I collapsed into his embrace, reaching to touch his cheek. But my hand froze midair. My wedding robes reminded me I had no right to demand anything more of him. Yet, unexpectedly, Rongxiao seized my wrist and drew it to his throat, placing my palm over that scar. As if possessed, my hand slid restlessly downward, seeking the end of that old scar. Rongxiao said nothing. Where my fingertips touched, a scorching red rose. Undoing his clothes, I finally saw the full extent. My fingertips traced the scar's path, following its curve deep into his side. Had that blade cut just 1 inch deeper, it would have cleaved him clean in two. The wine's haze swirled in my mind, spinning wild thoughts. One moment, I imagined the tragic grandeur of his lone infiltration into enemy territory. The next, I wondered why the skin beneath my touch grew ever hotter. The stern military strategist's sword-like brows furrowed slightly. His cheeks flushed crimson against the glow of my wedding robes. Hong Luo, I've never met a woman like you. Forging iron, mastering martial arts, charging into battle, whatever you desire. You seize it yourself. He seemed drunk too, his voice soft and warm, his waist trembling slightly. The world wonders what kind of woman could stir the heart of a man like me. The king of hell. I now have my answer. Rongxiao's face flushed crimson, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. Hong Luo, I can do without a formal title. In all his life, Rongxiao yielded only this once. He surrendered his entire heart to me, without name or claim. Before Princess Huiyu's wedding, I met Du Huiqian's mother once. We exchanged hurried greetings on the wedding day. Afterward, she returned to the Du residence while I stayed at the general's mansion. We rarely crossed paths. Madame Jiang arrived with several housekeeper maids, carrying herself with the air of a mistress of the house. She established numerous rules within my residence. When I returned home after court, Fu Yuan, the young maid who managed my household, came to me tearfully, wailing that those matrons intended to sell her off. My temper flared. I had those matrons whipped and punished by kneeling outside the mansion gates. How dare they, to make a scene in my imperial residence, bestowed by His Majesty himself. I held Fu Yuan close, wiping her tears, and had barely stepped into the main hall when I saw Jiang rushing over from the rear courtyard. She had 3 sons and 1 daughter, and it was said she had trained her other 2 daughters-in-law to be utterly submissive. They say the matriarchs of powerful families carry themselves with dignity. Jiang Shi, born into privilege, naturally exuded it, crimson silk robes. She's just someone I brought to help you. If she made a mistake, a scolding would suffice. Why make such a scene? She turned to Fu Yuan, clearly seeking to assert her authority over the meek. This maid of yours is utterly improper, daring to claim she's your own sister and calling herself the mistress of this house. As your mother-in-law, it's only right that I discipline her. I pointed to my purple court robes, then to the plaque above the door inscribed by the emperor's own hand, mother-in-law. My parents passed away early, but I am not without a family. This mansion is the imperial residence bestowed upon me by His Majesty as my maternal home. Fu Yuan is family from that third-rank official's lineage. I helped Fu Yuan sit down and smoothed her disheveled hair. A mother-in-law disciplining her daughter-in-law is natural, but a maternal relative coming to discipline her daughter-in-law, that's overstepping. Fu Nian's tears turned to laughter at my words, and she reached out to clasp the hem of my robe. I found her among refugees when I was still unknown, offering her only bran and vegetables. She accepted without complaint, earning her own rice cakes by singing in the streets to repay my kindness. Back then, we sat in a thatched hut as rain fell from the eaves. Her melodious voice carried her heartfelt words to me. If you give me a peach, I'll repay you with jade. This is not mere repayment, but a pledge of eternal friendship. It wasn't just about repaying me, it was a wish for us to cherish our bond and remain this close forever. Fuyo had cheeks like apricots and peaches. During my years of hardship, Many ruffians and thugs coveted her. Unable to bear their harassment, she hung my discarded military uniform at the door, telling everyone, "My beloved is a renowned soldier. If you're not afraid of death, come on in." Naturally, alcohol emboldened the cowardly. Even after I returned home, they still dared to climb over the wall to bully Fuyuan. Back then, I killed for her. Later, she followed me from Jiangnan to Weibei. Starving, shivering, and homeless. She told me, "If you die in battle, I'll hang myself on the road to the underworld. Just wait for me. We'll be reborn together, even as a cat and dog in the next life. We'll still be companions." For Rongxiao, I fear no death in battle. For Fuyuan, I won't die easily. That's why she's closer to me than my own sisters. She should be the mistress of this general's mansion. Seeing me speak up for a young girl, Madame Zhang's expression darkened. She tried to speak, but I wouldn't hear a word. Come into my home to rule over me? Not even if you're the matriarch of a noble house. Lu Hongluo, your words are reckless and nonsensical. Madame Jiang flew into a rage, summoning several maidservants to restrain me for a proper lesson. I laughed bitterly. No wonder their mother and son, they still can't remember the emperor bestowed the imperial surname Qi upon me. Just as Mrs. Jiang was drawing her sword, a hurried voice came from outside the door, "Mother, stop this at once." Du Huaiqian had also returned from official duties, dressed in his official robes like me, having no time to change. After restraining his mother, he approached me silently and bowed, "General Qi." Clearly, he was preserving my dignity and appealing to reason. Following his lead, I shook the purple official robe on my body. "Minister Du, please sit and speak." However, furious Jiangshu remained. She must have recognized the situation. Though I was the wife of her second son, I was also a high-ranking official, several ranks above her second son. His Majesty was wholly committed to expanding the empire and had always valued military commanders. Therefore, someone like me, who had fought through consecutive hard battles, was a legitimate powerhouse. Seeing my unwavering stance and observing Du Huaiqian's profound humility, Jiang finally relented, her anger dissipating as she settled quietly to one side. Du Huaiqian approached Jiang and, in a rare show of support for me, remarked, "If mother wished to visit, she should have sent her calling card earlier. The general is magnanimous and forgiving, but we must not neglect proper etiquette." Ever since our heartfelt conversation on that snowy day, he had genuinely grown kinder toward me. Madame Zhang's face flushed with embarrassment, and she could only acquiesce. I mentioned the formidable matrons kneeling outside the mansion gates. Du Huaiqian had already considered this thoroughly. They were the ones who first defied Miss Fuyuan. They should receive their punishment and then be sent back to Jiangdong. With my departure imminent, I entrusted Du Huaiqian with caring for his mother during those days. I didn't even go to pay my morning and evening respects. With my power and influence, to endure the humiliation of in-laws and the harassment of a troublesome sister-in-law would be utterly absurd. On the eve of my departure, I went to bid farewell and inadvertently overheard their heart-to-heart conversation. Du Huaiqian seemed to have come to terms with it. Offering comfort to his mother, this marriage was entirely my father's doing. It was our Du family who sought to bring this new imperial favorite into our fold. We were the ones who schemed to ensnare her. Madame Jiang mentioned Princess Huiyu, saying that even as her wedding approached, she still inquired about Du Huaiqian to everyone she met. "Qian'er, it seems Huiyu truly wishes to be your concubine. She understands your heart and will always be more attentive to your needs." But Du Huaiqian's expression was resolute. "I made it clear long ago, Huiyu and I are destined to be apart. Since we're each starting new families, we shouldn't cling to the past. Otherwise, taking her as a concubine would disregard both families' reputations and dishonor General Qi. The matter is settled. Mother, if you truly care for me and wish me happiness, Please refrain from stirring trouble. Do not further offend Chi Hongluo. She faces such peril on the battlefield, we must not add to her burdens. Du Huaiqian's words were so virtuous and wise, truly befitting a young master of a distinguished family. I couldn't help but smile, then quietly slipped away. At supper, I invited both mother and son to dine with us as a farewell gesture. Du Huaiqian looked startled, murmuring softly, "This is the first time you've invited me to the table since our marriage." Madame Zhang's face darkened further. Yet she dared not speak, merely eating in sullen silence. I served food to Fuyuan and smiled. With my mother-in-law visiting so rarely, proper etiquette is only fitting. Both mother and son brightened considerably, though Fuyuan remained troubled. Tomorrow you march to war. Can you truly not take me with you? I couldn't bear her enduring another life of swords and bloodshed. Clasping her hand, I whispered softly, "With you here, my heart finds peace. I know I have a home, and people waiting for me there." Fuyuan understood my heart and nodded obediently. Du Huaiyan awkwardly chimed in, "Everyone here is waiting for your return." I glanced at Du Huaiyan. Minister Du may not be able to wait for me at home in peace. Concerning military matters, I dare not speak further. I imagine His Majesty will issue an edict in a few days. This expedition aims to quell the unrest along the northeastern frontier. The small, splendid kingdom of Yelong has repeatedly caused disturbances. His Majesty intends to dispatch envoys for peace talks and recruitment. I was present in the imperial study when this matter was discussed. His Majesty joked that it was time for Du Huaiqian to achieve some tangible accomplishments, lest he prove unworthy of my meritorious service. Thus, it is highly probable he will be dispatched for the negotiations. In this campaign to quell the unrest, I serve as Deputy General, while the Marshal in command is the Duke of Jinghua. Ever since I rose to prominence, Rong Xiao voluntarily left the Prince of Jinbei's army to focus solely on advising me, remaining constantly by my side. Since that night at the gold and silver courtyard, the atmosphere between us has been strangely charged whenever we're together. Whenever I see the scar on his neck, I can't help but trace its path in my mind. I recall his scorching chest, his slightly trembling side. Look at the map. Don't look at me. Within the military tent, Rong Xiao interrupted my reverie. He stood far too close, as if deliberately positioning himself to be seen, constantly exposing that scar to my gaze. I slapped my forehead hard and pointed toward the splendid capital city. It's merely suppressing a rebellion. I'm fully capable of leading the troops. Yet just before departure, the Marquis of Jinghua suddenly petitioned the throne to command the entire army. Who is this Marquis of Jinghua? He's a veteran minister who served 2 reigns. Wherever he goes, there's no peace treaty, only subjugation through force. I don't believe he'll just obediently patrol the border and return. Rong Xiao regarded me with approval. Now you fight not just with your hands, but with your mind, reading hearts and minds. I leaned closer, clenched my molars, and tugged his collar up to conceal the scar, all thanks to my military strategist's guidance. He smiled knowingly, rolled up the map, and led me to meet the Duke of Jinghua. Sure enough, the Duke of Jing also aimed his sword at Xinli. We've already fought at Yunjiang. Why not seize the momentum and take it all? That tiny Xinli? I'll march my troops there. By the time I return, even the hottest wine will still be warm. Rong Xiao agreed. Xinli is a mere speck of a country, full of petty men. It's not worth negotiating with. Better to conquer it outright, lest it swarm like flies and disturb our peace in the future. The Duke of Jing turned to me, his salt and pepper eyebrows arching. His Majesty issued an edict this morning, stating envoys have been dispatched for negotiations. I hear Du Huaiyan. Who leads the mission? Is your husband? I clasped my fists in salute. With state affairs at hand, I await the Duke's command. The Duke of Jing regarded me with approval. No wonder you've risen to this position. The old duke was fired up, naturally demanding we march our troops forward to strike at the heart of the enemy. As our forces approached the city walls, the enemy pushed a figure out onto the ramparts, dressed in crimson official robes, tall and gaunt, bound hand and foot, yet refusing to bend the knee. The enemy commander bellowed, "Chi Hongluo. General Chi, are you present on the battlefield?" Under the gaze of my soldiers, I spurred my horse to the very front of the army. Rong Xiao, uneasy, stayed close by my side, shielding me with his long sword, wary of hidden arrows. Seeing me step forward, Du Huaiyan suddenly struggled violently. His mouth was gagged, leaving him speechless, but I knew he wanted me to leave. I lifted my gaze and shouted, "I am Chi Hongluo." The enemy commander grinned, slapping Du Huaiyan's cheek with his sword hilt as he threatened me, "General Chi, returning 3 cities for your newlywed husband isn't a bad deal." I glanced back at my soldiers, then looked at the Duke of Jing with obvious distress. Finally, hesitating, I turned to Rong Xiao and said, "Military strategist, what do you say? Should I buy a pine coffin or an osmanthus one for my husband? Both are costly, but he is, after all, from a distinguished family. Spending a little more is only fitting." Everyone gasped in shock. Even the Duke of Jing urged me to reconsider. The enemy commander could no longer stand idly by. He drew his sword and pressed it against Du Huaiyan's throat, trying to shake my resolve. I ordered my men to bring forth bow and arrows. I drew the string, aimed squarely at Du Huaiyan's brow. He gazed at me steadily, ceasing all struggle. His eyes held not a trace of resentment or fear. A scholar, yet he possessed some backbone. I had hoped to witness Du Huaiyan weeping and writhing in agony. Not seeing it was truly disappointing. I spoke lazily, "I've grown tired of my husband. My love has faded. Kill him if you wish. However," I drew the bowstring taut, arrow nocked and ready to fly. "Surrender now and open the gates. My men may show you mercy. Dare threaten me again, and once the gates fall, I shall slaughter every soul within the city with my own hands." My eyes flashed with resolve as I released the arrow. It whizzed past Du Huaiyan's ear, blood instantly trickling down his cheek. I dramatically beat my chest and stamped my foot. What kind of wind is this? So close, yet so far. Soldiers behind me gasped, "Chi Hongluo. Truly ruthless." Rong Xiao stood beside me, only he saw the truth. In that split second, I had deliberately shifted the arrow's path. Du Huaiyan's life was never my target. The feint was enough to terrify the enemy commander, who dropped his sword and fled to report the news. Soon after, the city gates swung open. The radiant monarch emerged, crown in hand, to surrender. After that, everything proceeded smoothly, until we returned to camp and encountered Du Huaiyan, his brow furrowed in cold defiance. Rong Xiao, serving as military strategist, advised me he was sent with an imperial edict for peace talks. But we marched without authorization, laying siege to the city. Naturally, he's furious. Still, my cousin is easy to placate. Just speak kindly to him. Upon reaching the command tent, Rong Xiao smoothed things over first, lavishing praise on Du Huaiyan for his dignified composure, noble character, and fearlessness in the face of life and death. But Du Huaiyan wasn't buying it. He turned and rebuked Rong Xiao, "If the Duke of Jing seeks to build a grand enterprise, I have no objection. But my cousin shouldn't be speaking for them, especially her." He touched his wounded ear and pointed at me angrily. Seeing his refusal to acknowledge Rong Xiao's efforts, I too grew irritated. "I only attacked while you were negotiating. Blame yourself for taking too long. That arrow didn't kill you? Blame my poor aim. Don't yell at your cousin like that." Rong Xiao tried to mediate, explaining to Du Huaiqian that leading the assault was the Duke of Jing's military order, and I hadn't truly meant to kill him. I instinctively pulled Rongxiao behind me. Why bother explaining? Second, young Master Du has despised me for ages. Yet for some reason, Du Huaiqian's gaze darted between Rongxiao and me, finally fixing on my hand clutching Rongxiao's arm. His fury only intensified. Qi Hong Luo! He seized my wrist, forcing me to release Rongxiao. I couldn't fathom where this scholar gentleman found such strength, but he yanked me forcefully before him. What did you mean by tired of me? Completely bewildered, I listened as Du Huaiqian enunciated each word. At the city gate. You said you were tired of me. That you no longer loved me. What did you mean? I shook off his hand, my grip a bit too forceful, sending Du Huaiqian stumbling and crashing into the desk. I declared with righteous indignation, it means I never fancied you before your father went to seek the imperial decree for our marriage. I pulled Rongxiao away as snowflakes as big as goose feathers swirled around us. Distantly, I heard the clatter of overturned furniture, and the man's heart-wrenching cries. Rongxiao pulled me back helplessly. He is your husband. The imperial decree is binding. You cannot escape this for the rest of your life. He tried to persuade me to go comfort Du Huaiqian, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. In the deep snow, I draped a fur cloak over Rongxiao. Both he and I knew it well. He marries to uphold the Du family's honor. I marry to repay the emperor's grace. Bound together by power and duty, he should not demand more from me. I brushed the frost from Rongxiao's brow and eyelashes. Military advisor. I cannot give you a title, but I can give you my wholehearted love. That night at the golden silver courtyard, my heart stirred. Yet Rongxiao wrapped me in his cloak. He cradled me gently onto the bed, soothing me to sleep. He urged me, in the prime of your life for glory, don't let us hold you back. He touched me not, but kept vigil beside me through the autumn rain's all-night drumbeat. I've come this far only because of his silent protection. That's why I want both, and I want it back. After returning to the capital, His Majesty reviewed the reports and naturally reprimanded us for deploying troops without authorization. But first, the Duke of Jing presented the pros and cons, swaying the emperor. Second, Du Huaiyan unexpectedly interceded for us, taking full blame upon himself. Thus, His Majesty let the matter rest. When Du Huaiqian admitted he felt guilty for delaying the negotiations, I nearly burst out laughing. After court, he caught up with me on the palace path and whispered, finally willing to smile for me? Truthfully, Du Huaiqian hadn't done anything wrong from start to finish. So I softened my stance and replied, I thought you'd report me harshly. Spring had arrived, bringing warm breezes. Du Huaiqian kept his head bowed, his gaze fixed on his own shadow. I only ask one thing of you. Sensing my eyes had turned to him, his voice grew tremulous, brimming with tears. Please, do not cast me aside. My heart melted into a soft, helpless puddle. Fate felt cruel and capricious. You know, if I were to cast you out, it would be defying the Emperor's command, a crime punishable by the execution of my entire family. Hearing this, Du Huaiqian turned his head to look at me, his eyes filled with the cautious hope of someone who'd lost and then regained something precious. First, his tears gave way to a smile, but then his brows furrowed deeply once more. If only we had met and known each other sooner. At the palace road's end stood the Vermilion Palace gates. An ancient willow's branches swayed in the spring breeze, dotted with tender buds turning green. I plucked a willow twig. Flowers may bloom again, but youth never returns. How much earlier should we have met? Before you and Princess Huiyu were childhood sweethearts? But I lacked the noble lineage to befriend you then. Du Huaiqian's eyes were filled with confusion. He clearly still didn't understand that between us, it wasn't a matter of meeting at the wrong time. I plucked the willow branch, waved it before his eyes, and laughed lightly. Besides, We met early enough. It was just that back then, I didn't catch your eye. Lu Hongluo was moved by second young Master Du's tenderness, a tenderness anyone could offer. But what moved second young Master Du was Qi Hongluo, adorned with power and privilege. Everyone adored her, so why should it ever be your turn? I love Rongxiao both because he is a peerless hero and because he treated me with profound respect even when I was still Lu Hongluo. That day, I brought Rongxiao back to the general's mansion. I introduced him to my newly built martial arts courtyard, prepared especially for him, and told him he could reside in that small pavilion anytime. Inside the pavilion lay a treasured sword. Engraved upon it were the 4 characters, Hongluo's gift of affection, my belated token of devotion. I placed the family head's token into Rongxiao's hands, military strategist. My home is yours. In public, Du Huaiyan had to feign magnanimity despite his seething jealousy, grinding his teeth with every cousin he uttered. In the flower viewing pavilion, as he poured tea for Rongxiao, Du Huaiyan asked with a forced smile, "When does my cousin plan to take a wife? I'd like to prepare a generous gift to congratulate you in person." Rongxiao leaned back leisurely in his chair, cradling the treasured blade I'd gifted him, unable to put it down. He turned to me and said, "I already have a wife in my heart. I shall marry no other this lifetime." Du Huaiqian's hand trembled with fury, spilling scalding tea that burned his wrist crimson. Fu Yuan, reading the situation, urged Du Huaiqian to leave. Attendants, quickly take Lord Du downstairs for bandaging. Seeing my partiality toward Rongxiao, Du Huaiqian, enraged beyond words, spat out one last venomous remark before departing. "No name, no status, what a disgrace." The stalwart Rongxiao bowed his head before me. "Hongluo, I only seek to live without regret." My heart ached for him. I drew him into my embrace, comforting him at length before sending him away. After supper, I had intended to confront Du Huaiqian, but he sought me out first. Mid-spring still carried a chill, especially after nightfall. My room still had a charcoal brazier burning, yet Du Huaiqian appeared scantily clad, wearing a summer weight shirt with a low neckline that exposed half his collarbone. Frozen crimson. My old coin purse hung at his waist, seemingly deliberately left open, revealing a corner of yellowed paper. It was all a display of submission and surrender. I glanced at it briefly before immediately averting my eyes. Recalling the day's events, I snapped angrily. "But Du heir, he doesn't even want the title anymore. Why must you still humiliate him?" To my surprise, Du Huaiqian flushed crimson and blurted out, I am your lawful husband. The emperor granted our marriage, a proper union with formal betrothal. Naturally, I must keep the wildflowers and weeds in check." I laughed in exasperation. "You once said I was alone in the world. But you still have parents and clan. Did they never teach you that a proper wife must possess the grace to tolerate others?" Du Huaiqian froze, then stared at me in disbelief. A look of profound hurt washed over his face as if he'd grasped something terrible. "Are you carrying Rongxiao's child?" I was utterly bewildered, pointing my index finger at myself. "Who? Me?" Du Huaiqian gave a wretched laugh, staggering as his robe slipped from his shoulders. "So what if you are carrying his child? Our marriage was decreed by imperial edict. As long as I don't commit a capital offense or am not divorced by imperial decree, your children will all acknowledge me as their father." Good heavens! How had things become so utterly bizarre? And what on earth was Du Huaiqian doing, tearing off his own clothes like that? "My cousin can do it. But how do you know I can't?" I delivered a swift backhand to Du Huaiqian's midsection, urging him to calm down. While he doubled over in pain, I hastily dressed him and shoved him out of the bedroom. After bolting the door from the inside, I whispered through the crack, "I still prefer my husband's former rebellious spirit. Don't push your luck. I'm in the prime of my life. How can I achieve anything with a big belly?" Du Huaiqian clearly accepted my reasoning. becoming much more docile and sensible afterward. True to his upbringing in a distinguished family, he excelled at managing the household, overseeing finances, and cultivating connections with the powerful. Knowing I valued Fuyuan, he merely assisted without vying for credit, a quality that earned my deep respect. Rong Xiao often stayed at my residence. When we met, we treated each other with courtesy and harmony. While practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard, I remarked to Rong Xiao, "Ever since your cousin came to terms with things, he's been a great help with all sorts of trivial matters. He navigates the capital's powerful circles for me, and my reputation has improved considerably since then." Rong Xiao pressed his advantage with lethal precision. Aiming to subdue me, he handles internal affairs. I manage external ones. You've certainly reaped the benefits of having both. I laughed shamelessly. His Majesty himself declared me the most distinguished female general since the founding of this dynasty. If I don't deserve such blessings, who does? After years of sparring with Rong Xiao, I've finally glimpsed his weakness and turned the tables on him. Just as he once pressed his blade against my throat when we first met, I now press the hilt of my sword against his heart. Only now, I use the flat of the hilt. Rong Xiao clearly conceded defeat. He lowered his sword and chuckled softly. The general wins. Du Huaqian strode in from the courtyard gate. Clutching my windbreaker, our general is naturally valiant. With boundless promise ahead. Lunchtime arrived, and Fuyuan came to announce she'd prepared a feast, personally cooking several of my favorite dishes. Rong Xiao sheathed my sword for me. Du Huaqian draped my coat over my shoulders, and I slipped my arm around Fuyuan's shoulder. Laughter rippled over the high walls. Spring blossoms bloomed once more. Looking at the people beside me, only one thought filled my heart. For the four of us, living well together matters more than anything else. The end.